Okay, this is called converting fractions to decimals, and we use division to do this. See down here at the bottom here, it says 3 over 8. That's our fraction. And that's the same thing as saying 3 divided by 8. So what we can do is we can actually convert it using to a decimal using long division. The bottom number always goes outside. We have 8 going into 3. And for instance, 8 cannot go into 3. So we know we're going to have a decimal here. So I put a decimal and I can add a 0 or 2. Right now I'll just add 1. But if I add a decimal inside the division sign, I have to add one right above it. And I try to keep those straight on. So 8 can't go into 3. We can put a 0 there. But can 8 go into 30? And we know that 8 can go into 30. Goes in there 3 times, and then what we do is we multiply 3 times 8. It's just regular division, 24, and we'll subtract 30 minus 24, which would give us 6. Now, I don't really want a remainder. I want to see if I can keep going and get this to be what's called a terminating decimal. That means it stops. So I can add another 0 here. When I add another 0, I just bring it down to go with this 60. Now, 8 can go into 6, but it can go into 60. Okay, it goes into 60 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. And I subtract this. 60 minus 56 is 4, still a remainder, and 8 can't go into 4. So let me extend this out a little bit and add yet another 0. I'll bring this down to be with the 4. And now I can say, well, 8 couldn't go into 4, but can it go into 40? Yes, it can go into 40 because I know 5 times 8 is 40. And now I know when I subtract here, 40 minus 40 is 0. So it does convert to a decimal to be 3.75. That's what 3 over 8 would be. Okay, if I go to another problem, let's say 9 over 5. And I want to convert this to a decimal. Well, my bottom number, it's not always the smallest number, it's always the denominator. The denominator's outside, we go 9 divided by 5. 5 into 9. Well, can 5 go into 9? Yes, it can. It can go in once. So we're just doing regular division. 1 times 5 is 5, and I subtract 9 minus 5 is 4, and I have a remainder. Well, I don't want a remainder, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my decimal point so I can add a 0. And again, if you put a decimal point here, decimal point must be in your answer, and always line them up. So I can bring down this 0 to where it's 40. 5 couldn't go into 4, but it can go into 40 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. 40 minus 40 is 0. So 9 over 5 converts to 1.8. And then we have some cases where we have something like, let's do 2 over 3. 2/3. Okay, again, it's not necessarily the smallest number. It's always the denominator. Denominator goes into the numerator. And 3 cannot go into 2. So I know right off I'm going to have to add a decimal point. Okay, so I have a 0 there. 3 goes into 20. Well, 3 goes into 20. I almost put an 8 there. It goes into 26 times. 6 times 3 is 18. And I subtract 20 minus 18, which is 2. Now, I know if this was going to be a bigger number than 3, I know I didn't pick a big enough number here. Okay, so I'll put in another 0 and bring down a 0, and 3 goes into 20. Well, I just did this. It goes in there 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18. 20 minus 18 is 2. Can you see a pattern here? I keep getting a 2. I could keep adding zeros, getting 20. So when we have this, we call this a repeating decimal, and we can go 0.66, and you can draw a line over it like that. That means it just repeats 66666. Sometimes people, instead of writing the line over it, they'll just round it and 0.67. Either way is acceptable. That usually happens when you have a 3 on the bottom, like a 1/3 or a 2/3. That's converting fractions to decimals.